All right. So I think what in most riot scenarios or demonstration scenarios that aren't quite riots yet, what is being used is the idea that they have their own medics, right? Uh, I think as a government entity, use that same theory kind of, but on the fringes, like not ground zero, but you should create aid stations where you station your EMS people. So if somebody does get sprayed like that, somebody else can carry them to the aid station. Right? Now, some won't use it. Maybe they'll be afraid they'll be arrested or whatever. But again, I guess you shouldn't do that. It's again just it's a neutral place. Well, because they were blinded. You can't just let two blinded people walk off like that. Right? I mean, I understand in the throes of fisticuffs or something that happens, but that wasn't that scenario. And, thinking larger, like I said, bring some EMS people in and create a couple of aid stations that essentially, if they get sprayed, really the initial law enforcement use of pepper spray was that you had an obligation to decontaminate. And again, in certain scenarios, it's not as feasible, and I think we got away from it. So I think the next best scenario, well, because if you sprayed somebody, you'd arrest them, right? You detain them at least. We don't do that in those scenarios all the time, right? Just dispersing, right? So kind of, I was pretty much at ground zero for the use of that. The World Trade Organization in the, it's about 2000 or something around there. So that was when the technology kind of shifted, right? That's when demonstrations and riots shifted also. Right. Right. Just come up with an SOP for again, you're not required to be perfect, but you're required to do something. Again, I would strive to be perfect, but if things fail in your medical aid SOP, then that happens, especially in a civil disturbance. I mean, they're not supposed to be there. It starts from that. I mean, I'm not. I told people, that the drug use was a little out of control, but Woodstock was a great idea. They didn't go to DC. They didn't go to DC. They didn't go to a city center. They just went out into the middle of nowhere and a music concert. Right. And again, that was a kind of shift in some of their you know ideology. The city, you can advertise the aid stations. The city could do it too. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as yeah, get back in there. We don't want to see that. But again, if law enforcement's spraying people, the judges have already articulated some things. I don't find that those judges like 100% of the order is going to stand appellate appellate process, but some of it will most likely. But again, if you headed off at the pass with something like, well, Your Honor, we've provided this, and that's how we're going to manage it. They're not supposed to be here. They're supposed to disperse. We're doing the best we can. We've provided 2 aid stations. Right. So yeah, the other thing was the get some of your EMS people that want to be part of a response team to something. So when they went in Uvalde, and it wasn't Uvalde wasn't the first, and I don't think it was the last, where the medics aren't allowed in until they clear. What you want to do is, again, kind of the opposite, but the same as Borstar. You want to find EMS people. Again, nothing wrong with training your own officers also, but if your officers are going in as a part of a clearing team, as far as the clearing team, they don't have time to render aid, right, as much or at all. Right? So you get your EMS people that may want to possibly be a reserve officer and be part of the special operations response team or response team. Because again, in Texas, a lot of that was just officers. Not necessarily special operations type of work, but it was just officers. Right? So they can go through some sort of training, and then they train with the special operations and things as far as being the medical response. So again, during your scenarios, you have people that need to be treated. And some may eventually become law enforcement officers. Right? So then you have like that Borstar capability. Well, again, you could even just call EMS, but I would have had EMS on standby, and essentially, there's whatever a channel or dispatch who dispatches EMS to that corner, right, or nearby. Well, you get to the EMS response gets it out of your responsibility. Again, a lot of people are vindictive, and they cut off their nose to spite their face in law enforcement. Right? There's no reason to Again, I think city cops have that understanding. Right? That's why they don't do fisticuffs if they don't have to. Right? They just spray. But again, the other side of the responsibility of the spray, again, in a civil disturbance, you don't always have to do that because you're trying to disperse, and they're wrong for being there. Right? Right. But again, when I learned Flexi Legal from an FBI, former FBI and undercover bike gang undercover guy. He was pretty good. Right. And so when you're looking at, see, I don't know who that is. I think it's Portland or PD or something. I don't think it's ICE or anything like that. But so they would understand that. You just call EMS and send EMS. Just start, you know, in other words, you need EMS people to be briefed. You need to sit down and come up with a plan. Where do, how far do they go? How far do you allow it? What's the best way to do it? Again, the aid station's a couple streets off or a street off or that would probably be great, just because they know where to take the people. Once they know where to take the people, then you don't. Again, you can call, but right. Again, EMS can start walking on feet, but on foot. But if you use military medics, and again, I don't know the legalities. A lot of them are trained EMT, but if you're not trained in a particular state, how does that work? Can you get them trained in it, like tested? Because again, if somebody's been working uh, as a medic, and they go to another state, they can usually take the test in a couple of days. And like the state could actually assist if they would, and just test them and pass them, right? So like Naples, Florida was weird for me because I was getting certified as a personal trainer, and I had to do this CPR course and all that. And I went to the CPR course, and the guy tried to make me a CPR trainer. It's like Naples itself wanted to do something, but you couldn't, right? Because it's a setup. They'll say, "Hey, I did something I didn't do, so I didn't. I don't put myself out if I don't have to." Right? Oh, he inappropriately did this or inappropriate. We had 5 women tell us this. It's all bullshit. Yeah, 5 people paid, 1 million. No, I wouldn't say like that. Probably $10,000 a piece, $20,000 a piece. Right? Probably be some sort of just like the cartels. What the cartels are doing to all of you is what they did to me all them years, as well as dirty cops did. Now you have to understand, you're being psyoped. Also, there's people. You're not always in other words, the red herring is that you're being doxxed with knowledge all the time. You're being doxxed by spy operators, and they're not necessarily doxing you. They're sending people into your life to psyop you and drug you and pay your neighbors to f you off. Right? That's why I tell you, stay out of those restaurants. Right? Make sure your security system's up to snuff. But they know how to overcome them. Again, of course, the South American, Central American gangs know how to overcome security systems. But don't you find it weird that nobody cares that our 16-year-olds were thrown to the ground? I'm not telling you that you shouldn't throw anybody to the ground. But don't you find it weird? Just like what they're doing to people's lives now. No, oh my God, oh my God. They did stuff to my life. Nobody cared. A lot more immigrants. It's really God's payback, to tell you the truth. Now, you all are not perfect in how you're doing it, but, but that's well, because there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. Now, you're not completely off base. Right? No, agents also. They just can't say anything and they lose their job. Right? So you're actually stifling help from the lower ranks because they don't want to lose their job. Right? So they can tell you how to do it better. They can tell you how to do it like Gaza now, right? Divide and conquer. Right. That was the worst response. So again, the idea is that militarily there are hostage, like Israel used to use hostage negotiators. I don't know who they are, but apparently the hostage negotiator came on very quickly and says they're not using us. Right? He was in the media. And of course, they slammed him and he stopped speaking, but long enough for me to get the information. But you have to understand what Netanyahu and everybody was using is ancient hostage technology. Now we're more manipulative. Right? We use a little bit more real psychology in figuring out what to do. Right. So those people need to be in from the ground floor, but you have to develop you can't just use hostage negotiators because again, there's different types of hostage negotiation. Right? There's different technologies. You need some advanced stuff. Right. And we need to have those people on call globally. So if something like that does happen again, or even something a little smaller, that we bring in the right people. We bring them in at the ground floor. Like I was saying, even Netanyahu's response, Trump's response, or Biden's response, whoever's in power, everything they do during the color suit they wear, that all matters. There's colors that Palestinians would be more amenable to speaking to. There's persuasion colors for everybody. So you put and persuasion clothes and persuasion ways of speaking. Well, because all we want to do is get it finished. We're not trying to kill Palestine. Actually, the reverse would have happened. We would have saved a lot of Palestinians, right? And we would feed the hostage faster. Thank you, Larry. Well, again, there's people on the right side that want like this insurrection type thing. And there's actually non-aligned entities that are just trying to mess up the United States that are actually moving most of it, if not all of it. They want both sides to fight. I can believe it. I woke up this morning and my lights were still on. So the new solar lights work pretty darn good. Right. They look nice around here last night. Had a little light back by the shed. So again, whatever they're doing with my lights, it's the same thing as trying to get me not to use my security system. Right. Trying to make it an unsafe environment. And again, that spoofing thing they do it. I guarantee they've led people to their death by spoofing them. Right. A woman driving in a car ends up in the wrong neighborhood. Right. They don't care. They're sickos. A Volvo, an older Volvo wagon. Looks like an 80s or something. Yeah, Trump administration's people are messing up. I mean, they're creating a world that what they're doing to other people could be done to them in a few years. So it's just back and forth. Right? I believe you got double agents. I don't think it could be done any other way, or would be done any other way. I don't think people are all that ignorant. Right? No, the spies are everywhere, and the people that the spies pay. They'll take your money, and then in a few years they'll take the other people's money. Right? I was like thought it was cool to have a quartz countertop, and now I'm back to whatever what they call it, whatever this imitation is. I prefer the imitation stuff. You're always worrying. Now if it was coated right, I guess it wasn't coated right. And while I was there, I bought some spray, but still not. I learned how to clean quartz, and again, it would be the same as granite and marble. But it's interesting what works best on that. I think stainless steel cleaner. That was actually the best. Now you buy quartz cleaner, it barely works. Right? The stainless steel spray from Sprayway works great on quartz. But it's just too much aggravation. I guess if again it was sealed right, well, it probably sealed in 1962 or something. I don't think it was that old. They probably remodeled, but like quite a few years back. I don't think they sealed it right. So again, just come up with a medical SOP. Again, even everywhere, even when your officers spray somebody and put them in the van, you should have a medical SOP. Again, and then the officers don't have to worry about a lot of the stuff they have to worry about when that's not available. I'm almost positive in your okay. So when you bring them in for questioning, you can probably use military medics. I'm not again. I don't know how far that can go, but if you spray somebody and you bring a military medic to monitor them, I think that's lawful. I'm just not sure how that works. I don't know. Again, there's limitations on what they can do. Okay, they could also be part of the decontamination team. Right. Sure. Well, when pepper spray was introduced, that was a major part of the training is decontamination. Then then we started with the riot control pepper spray, and that nobody was really worrying about decontamination unless the person was detained. Right. Trying to get some information here. That right. Again, what's his name? Vivino. Vivino. Yeah, he said we support the right to protest. That's not considered protest, really. Again, that they can call a lot of times that's where their psyop is, where they'll call something protest or demonstration, but it's not. It's interference in your work. I mean, it's obstruction of justice. Right? I mean, let's break that down to a 911 call. Those people get arrested. No questions asked. 100%. So, well, the problem is they're not cases. Again, a lot of they might bring up eventually that, but they were released. They like saying that they're released because it's not a good case in a crappy venue like Portland or Chicago. So the attorneys are like, we're not going to play that game. Right? They're not going to have a Comey case. Right. Thank you, Larry. Well, I mean, you might want to explain again. That's sometimes where you score. If you explain the process to them, say, "Yeah, we're thinking of charging." The attorneys looked at the case, said, "Yes, it." Because again, the idea is that they did know what they're trying to build is this idea that they did no wrong because they were released. Right? You say no, they're chargeable, but we decided that it just we got a 10,000 cases, and 10,001 isn't something that is going to work for us for whatever reason. Right? But that's not really. Again, he said the right thing. We support the right to protest, right? But he might want to explain a little further that it's not really protest. Kind of commensurate with standing in front of an ambulance saying, "I don't think this person should receive medical care." I mean, it's a government service. They're operating a government service, and that's it. Right? There's no room for protest in those things. Now, if you want to protest it, go downtown and protest something. I don't know. I wouldn't go downtown. Actually, I'd tell you to go out to the suburbs and the rural areas and have a concert. But a lot of people might have their life ruined. Like that, those people, in 5, 6 years, people mature and they might allow them in, but they, could be blocked from a job. Right. Thanks, Larry. The psyop world. Right. They're still investigating something, so I'm not going to say what you're looking for an answer to something. But I have to go through social media and look at what's there. I can't remember. Can't remember where I saw it. It did pick up. Something did pick up. Oh, maybe it was Facebook. No, all the question just came up on something. Like I'll read something and there's a question in there from others. All pedophilia is demonic possession. So it all is based upon something projected from someone else. Satan has no way with anybody without people on this planet selling out to Satan. So it's at a minimum a metaphysical thing, but it's also physical and psyop. They're sick, man. They'd say stuff about the porn squad people. I was so excited. I didn't know what the fuck anything meant. They were trying, they're using like buzzwords that I had no clue. I mean, I'm pretty naive. I grew up, kind of in the suburbs there when I, starting in junior high, and that's when you start really learning things. And I guess some people knew stuff. I didn't know anything. And then I went in the army, and you never, I guess people in the army learn things too. I never saw a thing. Right? I thought it was bad luck. Right? Thank you, Larry. Well, I didn't know anything about being willed to anything or being effed off or anything. Oh, Central Church is what it's called. Remember I was talking about the church The preacher speaks about politics. Let us tell the world. Pastor Livingston. It's a Pentecostal church. Right. So don't bring that shit in here. I didn't say it like that. Well, maybe he did with the deacons.
Lord, I thank you for these ladies who join these many from this church who denies the divinity of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
That's not his name. No, it's a fake name.
Jesus.
Well, he just built a new church too, so God's blessing him for it. All right. Thanks, Larry. But you know, for a Pentecostal church, they're pretty. I don't know. They're close to Baptist looking. I don't know what it is. I guess it's the area. I think it's North Carolina. It's actually looks to be a more conservative Pentecostal church than what you usually see. Now I was trying to get the name of that church. It says politics is of the world.
In any situation represented here tonight, I don't care who you are, what you're going through, there's still hope. We've completed the fabrication of the catapult for the fall festival this year at Central Church. And this is our catapult. This is our first test run at it. We're going to try to throw a basketball. We've got it loaded up with 180 pounds of load. And I'm getting ready to pull the pin to see what happens.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Which isn't actually, it's actually a little city, isn't it? Right.
Who join these many from this church who lead.
Well, the surprise about the end times, again, the reason I can give that message is what God did when he woke me up. He just kept pointing me. Every time I tried to get to a new scripture, he would say, go to Ezekiel 34. He just kept saying Ezekiel 34, which points at the church or the religious authority as being the corruption and the problem, and that there's a group of innocent people. What happens is, if I were to read that before I woke up, I'd see the innocent people as the church. I'd see it reversed, not the quote unquote sinner. Well, because Hashem says in there through Ezekiel is that you're not healing these people. You're actually making things worse for them. You're making them bigger sinners. Eventually, that message actually is delivered by Rabbi Yeshua ben David, aka Jesus, right? With more detail, with metaphysical detail, with evil eye detail. Yeah, church is evil eye. Rejected spells. 100%. Now we're going to give it back to them. Let you all walk around, have a messed up life. Like a large. Right. My gosh. Right. Well, what's happening is, again, when you see some of these photos and you kind of like, you're not going to say anything, but you cringe like, oh, I can't believe it also did that. What's happening is the more operations that you engage in, it's just a normal phenomenon. You know, when the more operations you engage in, the more of those photos are, more of those opportunities for those photos, more of those opportunities for officers to lose their cool or something like that. Right. But again, it's not good. So again, reinforcing SOPs, reinforcing the idea that the hills have eyes, the walls have eyes, right? So I think Portland was clearing streets, and looked pretty good. But again, we get to that point where they have that crowd control pepper spray, and they're using it direct up on people. And again, I understand the concept, but the idea is if you have medic available, you don't have to worry about it, and they can't pull it up later in a lawsuit or whatever it is, right? Thank you, sir. You just, again, you have to coordinate it. There has to be the command center has to coordinate where they are so they don't get stuck in anything, right? And then bring them in. And place them. And again, for dispersal, you could place the aid station 2 blocks south. You have to spray them. There's an aid station. There's an aid station, a medic aid station 2 blocks south. Take your wounded there, right? And that moves them 2 blocks south too. And then maybe in that scenario, you could probably use spray more than you do, right? And not be wrong, or not be found wrong by a court, right? Thank you, Larry. So you could actually use the medical aid stations to help disperse the crowd. Thank you. Instead of sitting there, in agony, but also, they have their medics that they use. But if right. So the medic aid station, their job is to actually make the protester feel comfortable. So you can place them in certain locations that help you disperse crowds or put crowds away from where you don't want them, right? Yeah, there's some Moss things out of control. Whoever those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people are, Mossad needs to remove them. Try not to use missiles. Try to use some other thing. Thank you, Larry. We agree, sir. Thanks, Larry. Well, again, there's probably officers that do hold back in using some of the spray because of that phenomenon, not phenomenon, but situation. Like, okay, what's going to happen next? Well, you have to decontaminate, and even if we don't have to decontaminate, is it going to bite us in the ass because they walk into the street and get run over by a car or something, right? So if you have the aid station, their buddies can take them to the aid station, right? Again, that's the idea, military idea of wounding instead of killing, because then they have to carry their wounded off, right? Generally, I mean, the Russians are pretty cold. Right. Right. Thank you, Lawrence. Now remember, all that's still going on the Earth. Right. So again, that's a metaphysic also. No, the immigrants never did anything. Why? Because you let them. They were running, multi-million-dollar narcotics operations and sex trafficking, and nobody was bothering them as long as they paid the right person. Right. It's still true in some cities, maybe possibly here. I don't know. Right. So you see, it's not about them being good people. It's just you let them do whatever they want, and the cartel says, don't say anything. Just cover for us, and we'll pay you, and we'll pay the cop, and right now here, again, it's a Medal of Freedom ceremony, but again, the idea is it's more you and your people having their moment to mourn the loss of Charlie Kirk. It's not just in your face. If you say something, we're going to harass you. I mean, people get to say whatever they want to say in this country, right? Within reason, of course. But right, so you can't force this. Again, he's not really a hero, but I mean, he's a political hero, I guess. He's not a national hero. Right? National heroes are all effed off because you all play that game of making your own heroes. Baby boomers broke this country. Even though I'm at the tail end of it, I wasn't part of the bullshit. Right? Stole it for themselves. Levin. Levin put more in there. I don't know if you knew that, what he's doing or not. More on Hamas massacres. I'll share it. It need to be done. Now we can't go back. The status quo is starting. We need to end it. And Hamas, the Palestinian people have a right of a Hamas-free life. Correct. I don't know what the best. Again, you can't get ahead of yourselves because the psychology and the metaphysics have to change prior to attempting anything major. But you already are scoring with civil affairs work. Always focus on that, and that may be your strength in getting rid of Hamas in a lot of different ways. If they don't have the support, then there's a lot of error. If the Palestinians want Hamas gone, they'll will them gone, right? And then it'll be a lot harder for anything to work. But if they see Israel as a bigger enemy, then they'll Hamas will have an easy way to stay. They shouldn't be allowed to do that. That should be a breach of the ceasefire. Right. Thank you, Larry. That should absolutely and unequivocally be considered a breach of the ceasefire. They need to be removed. They need to be removed from the future of the Gaza. The status quo will not be allowed. It's only a short step to killing Israelis when they're doing that to their own people. Again, when we speak about psychology, hostage negotiation, the what do they call that? The staircase to terror, right? I'll say the specific individuals. Specific individuals involved speedily, speedily I don't think I spelled. Is that even a word? I don't know if it's a word. Yes, it is a word. Yeah, that's it. I spelled it right. Because again, it's a mission creep. Eventually, they'll be disrupting uh, civil affairs, right? So we can't allow that. Can't even allow that. I mean, that's a mess. It's just like it's a failure. That's a failure right there that they're allowed to do that. Right? No, they should have been taken out. It's just like the Iraqis that were killed when ISIS took over. That should have never happened. Right? They were trained, and I mean, you spent years in military. Our military members were killed so that we could create that future for Iraq, and then you just let it be killed. It's disgusting. But yeah, it's a good article because this guy's talking about what's going on, the mechanics. But they just start disappearing. Here one day, gone the next. They'll get the idea, right? What are you wearing? Hmm. Well, no, I think the Latita James case is not as solid because it's a family member. Even if she was paying rent, right, the fact that it was a family member makes it more muddy. Right. Now, if it was just somebody that she rented to from an ad or something like that, that's different, right? Well, when you're dealing with family members, that's an easier one to fight. Family member down her luck, right? It wasn't that I was renting it to the public or anything like that. Right. Thank you, Larry. Well, it starts now, so you need to take out. I'm not playing games, Trump said. Right. So you need to go. The people that committed those acts of assassination need to go. Here today, gone tomorrow. And then once that happens, then they won't do it. Again, the idea of bombing the entire Gaza was never intelligent at all. Right. You need to do that. What Israelis are known for, one by one, right? Has much more power. Right. Yeah, yeah. Spies are allowed to do that kind of thing. It's part of the spy world. It's called assassination. Thank you, Larry. Well, the idea is we want to make it safe. Again, it's probably the only way to do it. Well, you may not going to pay to be a Hamas guy at that point, especially one that does that crazy stuff. Right. Hope looks pretty happy with that Arabian horse there. He appreciates the gift. It's not a real rifle, right? That looks bad though. Right. It's like a beanbag gun or something, rubber bullets, whatever it is. Right. Probably all of the above. Well, the problem with the two-state solution is it's not something that is really negotiable at this point. Again, we have to restore something of an order to, again, like the idea of this of Hamas assassinating its people. I mean, right? It's just, again, it's only inches away from going across the border, right, and assassinating. Well, I don't. I think putting that's like, I even said that in the beginning. I think putting that as the okay, we're going to work to this. Again, it became the work instead of working to it. Right? Well, we probably shouldn't discuss it until the government of Gaza becomes something that could be considered viable. That's not viable what they're doing there. Right. Well, I didn't support Israel's over aggressiveness either. Right. The answer, see, that's always our answer. What the other person did it, or did something like it, you know. Right. Well, the problem is when you have the large task forces, there's again the feeling of power goes to some people's heads, so you have to keep keep everything in check and keep reinforcing SOPs and improving on SOPs. And part of improving on SOPs is to bring additional medics in. You know, don't rely on the protester medics. Show that you have that responsibility under control. Right. Well, you know that, what do they call that, of care, something of care. Right. Thank you, Larry. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. I mean, the city just sends a bunch of ambulances to the location. It could even, set up some other thing like a building or something. I guess they send ambulances to a certain location and tell the protesters where the ambulances are, and have them placed in a place where you want the protesters versus where they are now. So when you spray them, then they can go to the other location. Of course, it's not perfect, but right. We agree. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. Okay, so make sure. Duty of care, standard of patient, legal and ethical obligation. It's in law enforcement too, right? Right. So again, it's an ethics thing, but it also can tactically work. Not that they'll all go there, but like obviously those two would have been taken to the medics if you had a medic station set up like one block south or where you were. right, or 2 blocks, whatever it is, they probably would have been taken there. Or and then again, you could also call and say, "Hey, we have somebody here," and then they come and try to get them out of there. It all goes back to the My Lai incident, the psychology of the My Lai incident. Right. Thank you, Larry. See if they have that. Psychology of the My Lai incident. Does it even know My Lai? I see a lot of Vietnam veterans around here. The My Lai massacre on March 16, 1960 was an event studied by social psychologists to understand how ordinary people could commit such atrocities. The psychological factors include dehumanization, obedience to authority, group conformity, and the brutalizing effects of combat. Most intelligent military guy alive. I don't know if you were hearing me there because it looked like something was weird. I don't know how that happened. But the My Lai, it goes back to the psychology of the My Lai incident. Right? So what we're trying to do is combat that. It happens all the time in a big task force is to, certain levels. Again, we talk about the first step of the staircase to terror. So we talk about the staircase to the My Lai incident. The first step. So we're just trying to head that off. Thank you, Larry. Well, there's a lot of officers that would be grateful for a medic teams being positioned places. Right, just makes it again. It'll actually free up a little bit the use of maybe chemical irritants for some officers because again, next you're in a courtroom getting sued. Right. Thank you, Larry. That's when the officer says, "Well, I'll drive the paddy wagon. That's it. That's just what I'm going to do. No, not enough of this bullshit. I'm going to drive the paddy wagon." I'm not going down like that. Okay, I got my phone. I got my microphone on. We're not going down like that. We're just going to drive the paddy wagon. I've got 2 years to retirement. That's it. They're not taking that away from me and this stupid chick. Real law enforcement. Boy, they're really moving to put these trailers in. Right. Well, I know that's the deep state, but who cares? I'll make my stand in Pennsylvania. Thanks, Larry. Well, it's just again, it's not to say that they can't do their job. Actually, like I said, it frees them up to do their job because they know there's the chances of being held accountable for something that gets messed up is a lot less because we have all of the all the contingency plans in place and all of the teams in place, and they don't have to worry about that because somebody else is going to take care of it. It's not my responsibility. We have the Medicaid teams, right? Thank you, Larry. Thanks, Larry. Boy, busy bees working everywhere. Thanks, Larry. Well, a lot of what they're calling as ICE is police departments. That's another thing. You can't disown their assistants. You can't say, well, that's them, not us. But essentially, it is, and they have different, different ways of handling things at times. Again, the clearing of the street, the block. I've seen that before, probably in the same city. They have that down pretty pat. All right. But again, the other side of the coin is you can actually increase their movement away from where you don't want them by putting an aid station, a couple blocks away, further in the direction that you want them to move. Right. So when you hit them with spray, then they go down there. Maybe even give them some little things to eat, little Halloween candies or something. Oh, I want to go down there and get the hot chocolate and the s'mores at the aid station. Right. And so. Yeah, the cops will be out there. Get some s'mores and hot chocolate. Get back out, post. Now you got to give them breaks to go down the aid station. Actually, you can't. That would mess it up, right? Get them all agitated. You can just order s'mores in the lunch truck, right? Right, Larry. That's a little bit out of control, but again, it's just reestablishing protocols and SOPs and reminding officers of that, and say, look, we don't want you not to do your job, and we know it's a very difficult job, and that you're going to be bound, dancing on this line, because that's just the way these operations work. But let's just be cognizant of that and establish control within ourselves. Maintain that control, because it's very easy. Again, the myline psychology. Right. Again, that happened. It happened in Louisiana during Katrina, I guess it was. All right. Okay. What's that? But yeah, when I watch the news, I see that also. Oh no, my lie answered it for me. I'm not sure what you're going to do in Venezuela. But again, I guess at some point that's supposed to pick up. The problem with that whole thing is I don't know if we made it to the appellate court. I think some of it made it to the appellate court. But most of it hasn't. And then there's also the use of force. But again, I mean, it's clear cut. It's not demonstration and protest. It's clear cut obstruction of justice. Demonstration and protest is something different. We agree. It's even beyond civil disobedience. In my opinion, it's insurrection. Well, if you look at assault on federal officer, you have to remind the court that you're not going to charge assault on federal officer if you think there's a difficulty in the case, and it doesn't mean that it isn't. It just simply means that it's going to be a tough case to prosecute, or we've got this many people charged, charging additional people. Just it's not something that is amenable to what or whatever the operational reason being. Sometimes just a sheer number, right? But again, of course, unfriendly venues and things like that. So this is not something novel to this particular case. It's every case, except for the Comey case. They're not going to even think about it. They just want to be idiots. Right. Well, but do you realize if Comey beats it, then he scores, right? Next thing you know, he'll be the Attorney General under the next president. I mean, you really you raise his stock in the Democratic Party world. But this is what causes the issues in our government. I mean, you have to. It's give and take. It always was. Our government was designed for give and take, right? Yeah. So the idea is when you get to the court, you have to say like each one of these things is an assault on federal officer. If you have 50 assault on federal officers in a single day, that's a certain level of insurrection. Officers aren't there to be assaulted. Well, if they complain about your use of force, hey, we're being assaulted. We're stopping the assault before it gets to a certain level. That's what that use of force comes from. Again, from your side, you have to make sure you're not developing a mentality where you're going where you don't need to go when it comes to use of force. I mean, again, there's easy ways to do that, And then I'm a big fan of within it. You're not going to just. Again, it's like training a dog almost. Again, it's psychology. You don't kill it with obedience. You don't kill the dog's drive for the work. So again, you have to, within it, say, hey, look, we know this is a difficult work. We know, this has happened. We know, and we don't want you to stop your work, but we just want you to, protect yourselves. CYA. There's a certain level of this that's getting into the news that you might be justified, but it's still, it looks like we're getting a little bit loose. Again, you want to tighten up this shit. Yeah, you're all just dogs to me. We use dog psychology. I'm trying to figure out, did this woman bury her pet over there? She has this. It looks like a bed. Hopefully, she didn't bury her granddaughter there. It's just like a bed. I don't know, like a Barbie bed or something. I don't know, or a Smurf bed. I don't know. But it's in the ground. It's made into a planter, but it almost looks like a grave. Scary. No, it's not a Halloween thing. It's there permanently. So I don't know. Maybe it was just some idea for a planter. I don't know. She might be deep state. Oh, is what it is. Deep state exists in communities before I get here, so I don't want to hear that they're not. Make some breakfast here. I have to start focusing on unpacking again, and then sometime this week I'm probably gonna have to take another trip down there with a trailer. I think I can do it all with a trailer. Right. I wonder if it'll let me put the refrigerator out front with a for free. Take it. Somebody will take it within hours, I'm sure. Maybe within minutes. Right. And maybe my neighbor could sell it if they. Or, I'm a deep state victim. We can't sell things. It's not prudent. Thanks, Larry. Well, what they put in the video. That's it's circulating around. I forget what the place was called, but where the officer sprays the young lady and the other man. Yeah, that's classic. They shouldn't be allowed to walk off blind like that. They shouldn't be able to walk off blind like that. Well, again, I think the answer to that particular issue is having A teams you can call, not relying on protester A teams, but a government ambulance you could call that's nearby to take care of it. Whether the ambulance comes in or a couple of medics, it doesn't matter. Get something, and then you meet that standard of care, and it doesn't cost you anything. And then it's out of your hair. So when a judge asks you about it, I go, yeah, we called the ambulance or the medic came in and handled it. But you're going to get things in the news that's going to look bad, regardless. The court inquires. Again, also documenting certain things when you do provide that standard of care. Being able to answer the judge succinctly and intelligently. Remember, the standard of care required by law isn't necessarily the standard of care that is most beneficial for your operation. A couple steps higher might actually be that. Because again, when you do have an issue, then you look around over here. I gotta get my microphone on. Your Honor, look, we're trying. We did this. This is a very chaotic thing that these protesters are causing. We provided a certain level of care. We do our best. But if they take that into the courtroom, where you got two people blindly walking off, I think what happened, I don't know, that they told them to move on. Right. And they refused. Now, if you had 15 people in front of you with those two people, you could probably articulate it much better. So again, the court's going to go back and forth in these scenarios as the argument moves. Well, why didn't you physically detain them? Well, when we physically detain them, Your Honor, you say we're using too much force. So, like I said, I would just create a medical SOP. Medical contingency plans. If you had a little more chaos, you might not call those medical teams in. You'll say, you'll announce over the loudspeaker, 2 blocks south is a medical aid station set up. They can help you. And then have them go 2 blocks south. You could make sure you say, south is in that direction. I'm going 2 blocks north. Right. So again, when you go to court, you say, look, Your Honor, we set up medical aid stations, and these things are unfortunate, but a byproduct of what the protesters are calling. Again, we're calling them protesters, but if they're engaged in assault on federal officer, if they're engaged in what's the word I'm looking for, intentional, they're engaged in intentional obstruction of justice. This is not some byproduct of simple civil disobedience. Right. So when we get to a certain level of obstruction of justice and assault on federal officer or assault on state officer, local officer, we're getting into that's your insurrection case. Right. If you hadn't fired all those people, they could tell you this. At least I think they could. Or maybe it's me in their head. Telling them what it is. And then they tell you. Well, because again, we're seeing this word. They didn't use civil disobedience, but they used a demonstration, protester. Right. Well, no, it's assault on federal officers, obstruction of justice, intentional and willful and calculated. Again, you're to the point of a criminal conspiracy to obstruct justice. Tell the court, we're not charging it because it's not beneficial for us to charge it. We are overtaxed as it is. And again, this goes to an insurrection claim that you cannot handle all those prosecutions. Therefore, you're not prosecuting.